Okay. Well, actually, we won't be covering the proof of this thing, but this problem is a very famous problem. It is known by the name of polynomial interpolation. Lagrange gave a solution for this problem. We know it by the name of Lagrange interpolation or Lagrange polynomial interpolation. He constructs a polynomial. So the polynomial is defined like this. You take the summation of this thing, fxi into fix, where fix is defined like this. Now for whatever x you want the value, you just put it in this polynomial. The value that you get would be the same as the value you would get for that polynomial. There is a proof for that as well, but we won't cover the proof because we also have to cover linear algebra after this. But this is very useful when you are actually solving some programming competition problems. You don't. This is actually order of n or order of n square. 1 second. Typically, this can be done in order of n square, and it is, I think, optimizable to order of n. But okay, even if it's n square, then it's better than the order n cube method that was suggested above. And it's very, very simple to implement. You will find that the length of the code is about 4 to 5 lines. So these were a few useful things that you should have known. So we just decided that we'll cover it in 15-20 minutes. So now we shall move to linear algebra. Okay, linear algebra, we'll just start with matrix. You know what a matrix is? Okay. There are very few basic operations which are defined on matrix. Addition, you can see how it is. Subtraction, multiplication. I do expect that you would know how to do a matrix addition or subtraction or matrix multiplication, so I won't be covering this. Okay, even this thing. You know how to transpose a matrix? How to rotate a matrix by 90%? Sorry, 90 degree. Okay, now on to some serious topic. One of the very basic operations that is involved with the matrix is, in fact involved with the square matrix, is finding the determinant of the matrix. This comes into use at a lot of places. Graph theory also uses it in counting the number of spanning trees and various other theorems. So, can anyone suggest me any method how you can actually find out the determinant of a matrix? See, so what he's saying is that if you have something like this, then your answer is actually A into determinant of this matrix minus B into determinant of this matrix and plus C into determinant of this matrix. This I expect you to know, so I won't be explaining this. Now, the problem with this is that if we keep doing, meaning if we actually follow this method, the complexity of the solution becomes n factorial. So as soon as my dimension of matrix exceeds 10 or 11, I can't use this method anymore. So, and in normal scenarios, you would be asked to calculate the determinant of matrices as big as 100 into 100. So we need some better method. Okay, so before we go into finding the determinant, let's just see that there are few properties that determinant follows. So if you apply any row transformation on a matrix, you guys know what a row transformation or column transformation is? Basically, you're doing some operation like R1 goes to R1 plus R2, which means you're transforming the row 1 as sum of row 1 plus row 2. So whenever you are doing a row transformation in which the coefficient of this is 1, sorry, 1 here as well, whenever you are doing a row transformation like this, then the determinant remains unchanged. And similar is the case for the column transformations. Okay? Next slide. Okay, so the method which is used for calculating a the idea is right. If you can transform the matrix into an upper triangular form or a lower triangular form, then the determinant is just the product of the elements on the diagonals.
So,
right?
Let the matrix be like first row AI, second.
Before you begin, do you know what an upper triangular form is or a lower triangular form is?
let the first row be in AI, second row BH like that.
Okay.
So what we need to do is let the matrix any element be like M of I of j. Then yeah, like for all I less than j, M of I of j should be 0. So that's the definition. So for second row, the first element should be made 0.
For the second row, the first element should be made 0. Okay.
So that can be done by multiplying the second row by a fraction such that and then subtracting it from the first row. So suppose B1 and A1. So if we multiply the second row by if we multiply
Yeah, I get your idea. The idea is right. So
in that method,
yeah, so basically if you let's say I'm taking very small matrix, I somehow transform this matrix into this, let's say this is A dash 0 0 no, I'm actually giving you a method of transforming this from n cross n dimension to n minus 1 cross n minus 1. So if somehow we are able to achieve this transformation, so what we can do is we can say that the determinant would be A dash into the determinant for this n minus 1 cross n minus 1 matrix, right? So we would have reduced our problem. We can do this recursively afterwards for this matrix as well. So in that case, when you do that for that matrix, then in that case this f dash becomes 0. Okay. So if we somehow can do row transformation so that we can reach this state from this state, then we can reduce our problem to a dimension of n minus 1 cross n minus 1. Is this clear? The transformations, what would that transformations be? I'll explain later. But if we somehow can do this transformation, so for doing that, what we do is, first of all, we check whether A is 0 or not. If A is 0, then we try to find a non-zero element in this column. Okay? If A is 0, then we try to find a non-zero element in this column. There would at least be a non-zero element in this column. If there is no non-zero element, then the determinant is already 0. We can directly say, if one of the columns or one of the rows is 0, then we can directly say that the determinant is 0. Okay? So there has to be at least one non-zero element in this column. If this is 0, we swap this row with a non-zero containing element. After swapping, my determinants becomes equal to determinant into minus 1. Whenever you do a swap of rows or a column, then your determinant becomes negative. So after you have done that, you are sure that this element is non-zero. Is this fine? So now for every row Ri, you apply a transformation. So basically you are trying to make this element 0. So what you do is, for every row, you apply a transformation that this row is equal to this first row divided by A into this element. So this will go to 0 and you will get some xy values here. This you understand? We're taking up this transformation. Is it visible at the back? Yes or no?
yes.
Yes, okay. So you do this transformation. These are very basic things. So you do this transformation. By doing this transformation, this becomes 0. You do it for every row. These elements become 0. Now your problem reduces to a dimension of n minus 1 cross n minus 1. Fine? Doing this transformation is order of n square, and you make such n calls. So your overall time complexity is n cube. This method is known by the name of Gaussian elimination. This is what is mentioned there. So in the end we are left with a upper triangular matrix. Upper triangular matrix, So the determinant is the product of the diagonal values. Time complexity n cube, as I already described. this does involve floating point calculations, and hence there might be a few errors. So next we'll describe a method in which we don't have to do any floating point calculations. So the idea being that if all the elements in a matrix are integer, the determinant will also be an integer, right? So what's the point running into floating point calculations? So by the way, before that, would any one of you want to give an attempt to this problem? You want to calculate the determinant of a matrix, but no floating point calculations are allowed. Sorry? The denominator? Okay. So he says store everything as numerator upon denominator. If you do that, your denominator might grow to be very large. And so can the numerator. Sorry?
What if we take GCD at every step?
Even if you take GCD at every step, you might end up with big calculations. See, the reason being that you are adding a new denominator a at every step. The a might still be co-prime to your numerator, and as long as it's co-prime to the numerator, you are just continuing to multiply it. So it's very likely to exceed 2 to the power 64 or 64-bit integer in a few steps. Well, the point he was making was that should we, meaning if we store the number in numerator upon denominator form with GCD removed, so even in that case it can exceed. Fine. So what we'll do is that we'll follow, one second, let me write that matrix again. Okay, this is my matrix. Again, my goal is to transform this and this to 0. I don't care about anything else. I just want to make these two 0, and this, of course, if it is non-zero, then we have a non-zero determinant. If it is 0, then we have a 0 determinant. So for doing that, what we do is that we follow a strategy quite similar to the Euclidean's method. The Euclidean's method for finding out GCD. So what we do is at every step, we will have, let's say at every step in a column we will have some 0 values and some non-zero values. Let's for now assume that all values are positive. If we have few positive values and few 0 values, so what we do is among the positive values I choose the minimum and I swap that row with the first row to bring the minimum at this point. Okay? The swapping would cause the determinant to become -1, which we can just do by multiplying the current determinant with -1. Now what we do is we replace every value. So let's say this is D. We replace every value with D mod min, or you can just state it formally as for every Ri, where this is an integer division. We apply this operation. After this operation, D will not become equal to 0. It will be some value which is less than min. Do you get this? It will be some value which is less than min. Same will be the case for G. So at every step, you are actually reducing the elements by the minimum element. So next time when you choose the minimum, it will be something less than minimum. So this is very, very similar to the process that you follow in Euclid's algorithm for finding out GCD. Right? And we established a meaning, if you guys would have read what Euclid's method is, you would know that the bound on number of steps which is there in Euclid's method is log n. So for every pair, meaning after n log n steps, we are supposed to bound up with these elements as 0. Okay? Once we end up with that, then we can reduce our problem for min into determinant for this matrix. This is actually n square log n. So it comes n cube n4. So it seems like the complexity for this algorithm will be n power 4 log n, but it would, meaning with a very detailed proof, somebody proved that it's actually n power 4. So we'll not go into the proof details. but the complexity for this algorithm becomes n power 4.